The prototype problem, the meticulous silence of Laboratory Complex 7, was punctured only by the soft humming of quantum processors and the occasional bubbling of nutrient solution. Chief Science Officer Vrexthal stood before the central incubation chamber, all 6 of his eye stalks focused intently on the translucent cylinder where their most ambitious experiment to date was taking form. Behind him, the Science Council of the Zalcorian hegemony waited, their exoskeletons perfectly still in the traditional posture of scientific anticipation. The human genetic template has been successfully integrated, announced Vrexthal, his voice modulator pitched to convey appropriate professional satisfaction without exceeding regulation enthusiasm. After 17 failed attempts, we have achieved cellular stability and proper mitochondrial function. The clone is developing at precisely 2.73 times the rate of a natural human embryo, as intended. Senior Council member Drazake clicked her mandibles in the formal pattern indicating cautious approval. And you're certain this specimen will provide the military advantages our simulations predicted? The hegemony has invested considerable resources in this project. The human species remains an anomaly worthy of our full attention, replied Vrexthal. Despite their primitive technology and chaotic social structures, they have repelled 3 standard conquest protocols. Their unpredictability is tactically valuable if we can harness and control it. The clone floated peacefully in its nutrient bath, unaware that it represented the culmination of 37 Earth years of clandestine abductions, genetic sampling, and failed laboratory work. The Zalcorians had determined that breeding their own humans would be more efficient than continuing to kidnap them for study. Humans were troublesome captives with their constant escape attempts and peculiar demands for bathrooms and Netflix. Estimated time to maturation completion, 26 rotations, announced the laboratory AI in its perfectly modulated tone. All growth parameters within acceptable variance. Vrexthal's chest sacs inflated with pride. The Science Directorate would surely award him the Thorax Badge of Distinguished Research for this breakthrough. Perhaps even a larger hibernation pod. 26 rotations later, the Science Council reconvened. The atmosphere in Laboratory Complex 7 was charged with a nearly inappropriate level of anticipation. The clone had reached physical maturity and had been transferred to the Behavioral Assessment Chamber, a carefully constructed replica of what their research indicated was a standard human-dwelling unit. Complete with the strange padded horizontal resting platform humans required and the peculiar water waste facilities they used with alarming frequency. Activation sequence initiated, announced Vrexthal. Neural patterns are stabilizing. Consciousness emergence in 3, 2, 1. The human clone opened its eyes for the first time. The council members instinctively stepped back, their natural caution asserting itself despite centuries of scientific training. The human male specimen sat up, blinked several times, and looked around the chamber with an expression their behavioral analysts had categorized as mild confusion. "Good morning," said Vrexthal in carefully practiced human English. "Please remain calm. You are safe." The human stared at the assembled aliens, his expression unchanging for 7.2 seconds, precisely the average human processing time for unexpected stimuli according to their research. Then, instead of the predicted fear response, the human's face contorted into what their xenologists called a smile. "Cool costumes," said the human. "Is this a convention or something?" Vrexthal exchanged a quick series of pheromone signals with his colleagues. This was not the expected response. "We are not wearing costumes. We are Zalcorians. You are in our research facility." The human nodded slowly. "Right. Zalcorians. Got it." He stretched his arms above his head in a gesture their databases identified as casual limbering. "So, what am I doing here exactly? Did I sign up for some kind of study? The last thing I remember is... Actually, I don't remember anything specific." "That is normal," Vrexthal assured him. "You are a new being. You have been created using human genetic material. You are what humans call a clone." The human's eyebrows rose. "I'm a clone? Seriously?" He looked down at his hands, turning them over with apparent fascination. That's actually pretty awesome. Do I get superpowers or something? Draz-AK emitted a low warning hiss. The specimen is not responding according to psychological profiles. Humans are supposed to experience existential distress when confronted with their artificial nature. The human swung his legs over the edge of the bed and stood. The Zalcorians instinctively moved into defensive posture beta, but the clone merely walked to the mirrored wall and examined his reflection. Not bad work. I look totally normal. So, what's the plan here? What am I supposed to do? Brexthol followed the carefully prepared script for new specimen orientation. You will undergo a series of tests to evaluate your capabilities. Your cooperation will be rewarded with comfort and sustenance. The human turned and leaned against the wall in a posture their databases classified as casually defiant, a stance that made several junior researchers nervously wrestle their wing casings. Tests, huh? Like math tests or more like obstacle courses? Because I'm feeling pretty energetic, but I'm also kind of hungry. Do you guys have any pizza? We have prepared nutritionally complete human sustenance, said Brexthol, gesturing to a dispensing unit in the wall that slid open to reveal a gray nutrient cube. The human approached the cube, picked it up, sniffed it, and set it down again. Yeah, I'm going to pass on that. What about coffee? I feel like I should be drinking coffee. The specimen is making demands, noted Council Member Exlar, with disapproval vibrating through his thoracic plates. This indicates an unexpected level of self-determination. Perhaps the neural patterning requires adjustment. The human crossed the room and began examining various objects, picking them up and setting them down with a casualness that the watching Zalcorians found deeply unsettling. Humans were supposed to be cautious in new environments. Their own research confirmed this. Nice place you got here, said the human, tapping on the wall panels. Kind of minimalist. Very IKEA meets spacecraft. So, I'm guessing you cloned me for a reason? What's the big plan? Brexthol hesitated, then decided that transparency might encourage cooperation. We have created you to study human adaptability and cognitive processes. Your species exhibits unusual problem-solving capabilities that do not align with your technological development level. You want to figure out why humans are smarter than we should be, considering we're still driving cars instead of spaceships? The human grinned. That's fair. We are pretty awesome. I once figured out how to fix my Wi-Fi by hitting the router with a shoe. Brexthol's confusion glands swelled involuntarily. This response pattern was not in their behavioral prediction models. The human exhibited none of the fear, disorientation, or reverence that their simulations had anticipated. Instead, he displayed a peculiar confidence that their xenopsychologists had only observed in human military leaders or intoxicated college students. Your first assessment will begin shortly, Brexthol announced, attempting to regain control of the interaction. You will be presented with a series of logic puzzles designed to, actually, interrupted the human, I'm going to need a bathroom break first. And maybe some real food. And clothes would be nice. These paper pajamas are a bit drafty. He plucked at the thin material covering his body. Also, do you have a name for me? Or should I pick one? Brexthol's eye stalks rippled in the Zalcorian expression of confusion. You are Specimen 42H. Yeah, that's not going to work. The human pointed to himself. I'm going to go with Alex. I feel like an Alex. The Science Council members exchanged alarmed glances. Self-naming was an unexpected development. It indicated an advanced sense of identity that shouldn't have formed so quickly. For the next 12 rotations, the newly self-designated Alex continued to confound his creators. He approached each test with a mixture of irreverence and unexpected insight that produced results their predictive algorithms couldn't explain. When presented with the standard cognitive barrier test, a maze designed to induce stress and measure problem-solving under pressure, Alex simply sat down in the middle of the maze and took a nap. The specimen is malfunctioning, insisted Council Member Exlar during the emergency review session. It shows no appropriate fear response. It makes jokes during critical assessments. Yesterday, it requested something called Netflix and chill and seemed disappointed when we provided temperature regulation and explained we had no knowledge of this Netflix technology. Vrexthal's research reputation was rapidly deteriorating with each passing rotation. The clone was proving to be neither the compliant research subject nor the source of military insight they had hoped for. Instead, Alex seemed primarily interested in finding ways to avoid tests, acquire better food, and engage the research staff in what he called just hanging out. Perhaps most concerning, continued Vrexthal, his voice modulator unable to fully mask his distress, is the influence the specimen appears to be having on the research staff. 3 junior researchers have been reprimanded for engaging in unauthorized conversation with the specimen. One was observed attempting to replicate a human gesture called a high five. The Supreme Science Director's carapace darkened with displeasure. Your clone is contaminating our scientific protocols, Vrexthal. This experiment may need to be terminated. On the monitoring screens, they could see Alex in his chamber, using the nutritional paste they'd provided to draw crude images on the wall. One appeared to be a stick figure with eye stalks and mandibles, wearing what the database identified as a party hat. One final assessment, pleaded Vrexthal. The military intelligence simulation. If the specimen fails to demonstrate tactical value, I will personally authorize termination. The military intelligence simulation was the hegemony's most sophisticated testing environment, a virtual reality construct that presented increasingly complex combat and strategic scenarios. It had been calibrated specifically for human neural patterns based on data gathered from previous abductions. No human had ever progressed beyond level 3. Alex was connected to the simulation apparatus with surprising cooperation, even as he commented that the neural interface looks like something from a 90s sci-fi movie and asked if they had anything wireless. Simulation initiated, announced the system. Beginning at level 1. The Science Council observed on the monitors as Alex's virtual presence appeared in a simulated battlefield. Standard protocol dictated that the subject would attempt to secure weapons and defensive positions immediately. Alex looked around the virtual environment and then sat down on a virtual rock. Is the system malfunctioning? Asked Drazak. Negative, replied the technical operator. The human is simply not participating. On screen, Alex began to hum audibly and tap his fingers on the virtual rock. After approximately 7 minutes, the simulation automatically advanced him to level 2, assuming a system error had occurred. In the level 2 scenario, enemy combatants appeared on the horizon. Alex waved at them. This is unprecedented, whispered Vrexthal. No subject has ever attempted to establish friendly contact with the simulation enemies. To the astonishment of the observing council, the simulation combatants, programmed to attack any subject immediately, hesitated. Their programming had no protocol for responding to a friendly greeting. He's exploiting a gap in the simulation parameters, realized Vrexthal. The system wasn't programmed to respond to non-aggressive initiation. Level after level, Alex refused to engage with the expected parameters. He hid in unusual locations, created impromptu shelters out of materials not designated as construction components, and at one point appeared to be taking a nap while simulated warfare raged around him. Yet somehow, he continued to advance through the levels, exploiting gaps in the programming, finding paths that should not have existed, and occasionally wandering into victory conditions through what appeared to be blind luck or incomprehensible intuition. By level 12, a level-no Zalcorian strategist had ever reached. Alex had assembled a team of supposedly enemy NPCs who now followed him around like loyal companions. How is he controlling the enemy units? Demanded the Supreme Science Director. Unknown, admitted the technical operator. He appears to have befriended them. On screen, Alex and his unlikely virtual allies were building what appeared to be a primitive shelter in the middle of a designated battle zone. He had somehow convinced hardened war algorithms to participate in construction rather than combat. Enough, declared the Supreme Science Director. Terminate the simulation. This cannot be correct performance. The system powered down, and Alex blinked as the virtual reality dissolved around him. When the interface helmet was removed, he grinned at the assembled scientists. That was fun. Kind of buggy, though. Your NPCs are super easy to manipulate if you just talk to them instead of shooting them. Rexthol's professional demeanor finally cracked. How did you do that? The simulation is designed to test military intelligence and combat strategy. Alex shrugged. Yeah, I figured that out pretty quick. But fighting seemed like a lot of work. It's always easier to make friends than enemies. He stretched and yawned. So, what's next? Because I've been thinking, you guys should really try ice cream. It would probably blow your mind stalks or whatever. The Science Council withdrew for emergency deliberation, leaving Alex under heightened security protocols. The discussion chamber vibrated with agitated pheromones and clicking mandibles. The specimen is defective, insisted Exlar. It does not behave according to any established human psychological profile. On the contrary, countered Vrexthol, his scientific curiosity overriding his disappointment, it may represent an aspect of human behavior our previous studies failed to capture. The unpredictability we sought to harness is manifesting, just not in the anticipated form. The hegemony required a predictable military asset, reminded the Supreme Science Director. This, Alex, is anything but predictable. With respect, Vrexthol ventured, perhaps unpredictability is precisely what makes humans militarily formidable. Our previous specimens were under duress, abducted, frightened, confined. This clone has been treated differently from creation and exhibits different behavior patterns as a result. Meanwhile, in a supposedly secure observation chamber, Alex had somehow convinced one of the guards to show him how the environment controls worked. By the time the Science Council returned, the temperature had been adjusted to what the human called beach weather, and Alex was attempting to teach 3 increasingly receptive guards a human ritual called the wave. This is unacceptable, chittered the Supreme Science Director. The contamination is spreading. Vrexthol watched as one guard successfully performed the wave motion, causing Alex to cheer and offer another high five. I believe, said Vrexthol slowly, we may have made a critical error in our cloning process. Further examination of the genetic sequencing logs revealed the problem. During the final stage of genetic assembly, there had been a power fluctuation lasting 3.7 microcycles. Apparently, this had been sufficient to cause subtle alterations in the clone's developing neural pathways. We didn't clone a standard human, explained Vrexthol to the council. We appear to have accidentally created what humans call an optimist, possibly combined with something they refer to as a slacker. Is it dangerous? Demanded Drazek. Vrexthol's eye stalks drooped in resignation, only to scientific protocols and military discipline. The specimen's brain chemistry shows elevated levels of dopamine and serotonin. He experiences more pleasure and less fear than average humans. Our behavioral modification techniques are ineffective because the subject simply doesn't care enough to be intimidated. The Supreme Science Director's decision was swift and final. Terminate the specimen and begin again with proper genetic sequencing. We require a human who will help us understand their military capabilities, not one who attempts to organize what he calls game nights with the laboratory staff. As the termination team prepared to enter the observation chamber, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. The main view screen activated to show the laboratory's orbital status. Perimeter breach detected, announced the AI. Unknown vessels approaching. Configuration matches, human design. Impossible, gasped Vrexthol. Humans don't have interstellar capability. On the screen, a fleet of ships that definitely should not exist swarmed around the laboratory station. Communications channels burst open with incoming signals. Attention alien research vessel, came a human voice over the speakers. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We have tracked our missing citizens to this location. You are harboring at least one human citizen against their will. Prepare to be boarded. The Science Council erupted into chaos. The Zalcorian hegemony had been monitoring Earth for centuries, absolutely certain that humans remained confined to near-Earth space with primitive propulsion technology. The existence of this fleet fundamentally violated all their intelligence assessments. In the confusion, no one noticed that Alex had somehow gained access to a communication terminal in his chamber until his voice came through the facility-wide system. "Hey guys, it's Alex. So, funny story, turns out I actually do have all the memories of the original person you cloned. They were just taking a while to fully integrate. Including, his memories of being the head of counterintelligence for Earth's secret space program. You probably should have picked a different abductee to clone, but hey, we all make mistakes." Vrexthol's exoskeleton nearly cracked from shock. "How did you access the communication system? Your security passcode is just your name backwards. Ludzerv isn't exactly Fort Knox. Anyway, I've been sending a subspace signal to Earth since day 3. The Earth Defense Fleet is here to pick me up and probably have some words with you about all that abducting and experimenting. They seem pretty annoyed about it." Docking clamps engaged as the human vessels attached to the laboratory station. The Zalcorian defensive systems, designed to repel known human technology, stood down in confusion when confronted with technology that registered as both human and impossibly advanced. "Oh, and one more thing," continued Alex cheerfully through the communication system. "You might want to work on your cloning process. I don't think I'm quite what you were aiming for. The original me, the guy whose DNA you grabbed, is actually a pretty serious, by-the-book military type. Super boring at parties. But something in your process must have gone sideways because, well," he chuckled, "I'm definitely the version of humanity you were not prepared for." As armored humans began to pour into the laboratory complex, the Supreme Science Director turned to Vrexthol, mandibles clicking in rage. "Your experiment has doomed the hegemony to war with a species we severely underestimated." Vrexthol watched on the monitors as Alex greeted the human soldiers with casual high-fives and what appeared to be jokes, given the laughter that followed. "On the contrary, Director, I believe the clone may have saved us from a far worse fate. Look." On screen, Alex was clearly arguing with the more aggressive human soldiers, gesturing emphatically toward the cowering Zalcorian scientists. His words came through the still-open communication channel. "Seriously, no need to go all trigger-happy. These guys are basically just overgrown science nerds. Super socially awkward, but they're not evil. They're just really, really bad at first contact protocols." Against all Zalcorian military doctrine and prediction, the human forces were actually standing down, listening to the clone's assessment. "I believe," said Vrexthol quietly, "we may have accidentally created exactly what both our species needed, not a weapon, but a bridge." 3 cycles later, the Zalcorian Science Directorate found itself hosting an unprecedented diplomatic conference with representatives of the heretofore unknown Earth Defense Force. Alex, still wearing what he called borrowed pajamas, but now accessorized with a makeshift name tag reading "Accidental Ambassador," was facilitating the discussion with surprising effectiveness. "So here's the deal," Alex explained to both parties. "The Zalcorians promise to stop abducting humans for study, and Earth agrees not to unleash its really quite impressive arsenal on Zalcorian research outposts. Instead, we establish a cultural and scientific exchange program. You guys clearly have a lot to learn about each other." Admiral Chen, a stern-faced human who indeed seems to be a much more serious version of Alex, regarded the Zalcorian Council with barely concealed disdain. "Your cloning of my genetic material without consent constitutes a serious breach of interstellar law." In their defense, countered Alex, they didn't know we had interstellar law. They thought we were still figuring out TikTok and nuclear fusion. "That is accurate," admitted Vrexthol. "Our intelligence on human development has been, flawed. Earth has maintained a policy of technological camouflage for centuries, explained Admiral Chen. We allow limited observation of our public infrastructure while concealing our true capabilities. It has proven an effective defense against numerous potential invaders. Alex grinned. Turns out humans are pretty good at playing dumb when there might be aliens watching. Who knew? As the diplomatic talks continued, Brexthol found himself drawn into conversation with his accidental creation during a recess period. I still do not understand, confessed the scientist. Our genetic processing should have created a perfect replica of Admiral Chen, yet you are. A vastly improved version, suggested Alex with a wink. Different, concluded Brexthol. Less military, more fun, offered Alex. Yeah, something got scrambled in the cloning process. But here's what you guys don't get about humans. Our adaptability isn't just about military strategy or problem solving. It's about being able to become what's needed in the moment. You tried to create a weapon and got a diplomat instead. That's actually pretty on brand for humanity. Brexthol's confusion glands throbbed. But you were not designed to be a diplomat. Alex laughed. Nobody is designed to be anything. That's the point you guys missed. Humans aren't defined by our genetics or our programming. We're defined by our choices. You created me to help understand human unpredictability, but you were trying to control and weaponize it. That was never going to work. As the diplomatic session resumed, Brexthol watched his clone creation skillfully navigate the tensions between two vastly different species, somehow finding common ground where none should exist. The Science Council had failed to create the perfect military asset, but in their failure, they had perhaps discovered something far more valuable, a new understanding of what made humans truly dangerous in the cosmos. It wasn't their weapons or their tactics that other species should fear. It was their infuriating, inexplicable ability to become whatever they needed to be, even when artificially created in a laboratory by beings who fundamentally misunderstood them. 6 months later, as the first official Zalkorian delegation prepared to visit Earth as part of the newly established Cultural Exchange Initiative, Brexthol received a personal communication from Alex, who had been granted full legal status as an independent human citizen despite his laboratory origins. Just a heads up, the message read, "I've convinced the Earth government to start the tour at something called a karaoke bar. Bring your singing voice and maybe learn the words to Sweet Caroline. Trust me, it's going to be way more effective for interspecies relations than any military assessment could ever be. Also, ice cream. Don't forget to try the ice cream." Brexthol, newly appointed as Xenocultural Relations Director, felt his confusion glands twinge again. But for the first time in his scientific career, the confusion wasn't entirely unpleasant. Perhaps there was something to be said for embracing unpredictability after all.